Maria knew she was being followed. The black Bentley had trailed her bus for 3 stops. Inside her bag were documents she'd mistaken for leftover food, documents belonging to Marcus Harrington, the CEO known for destroying careers over smaller mistakes. When he confronted her outside her apartment, she saw only rage in his eyes. Neither of them knew that behind her door waited someone who would transform this powerful man from merciless executive to shattered child in an instant. Before we continue, comment from where you are watching from. Mr. Harrington, I swear I didn't know, Maria Alvarez said, her voice barely audible as she clutched the brown paper bag to her chest. The cold evening air bit at her face as she stood outside her apartment building, a towering figure blocking her path home. Marcus Harrington's 6'2" frame was even more imposing in person than in the company newsletters. His tailored suit probably cost more than 6 months of her salary. The frown lines etched between his eyebrows deepened as he extended his hand. The documents, Ms. Alvarez? Now. Maria's fingers trembled. How could she have been so stupid? The bag had been sitting on the assistant's desk, right where leftover meeting food was always placed for staff to take home. A thoughtful company tradition that had helped her stretch her meager salary to cover both food and her mother's medications. I thought it was leftover food, she whispered, tears threatening. Like always, I didn't look inside until I was on the bus. You expect me to believe you accidentally took confidential merger documents worth billions in a paper bag? His voice was ice. Security footage shows you deliberately picking it up. Yes, Maria swallowed hard. I deliberately took what I thought was food. Miss Parker always puts leftovers in bags like this. A flash of something, uncertainty perhaps, crossed Marcus's face. His assistant, Jessica Parker, did have a habit of repurposing delivery bags. She claimed it was her small contribution to saving the environment. The documents, he repeated, his tone slightly less hostile. Maria handed over the bag, her future crumbling before her eyes. 6 months at Harrington Enterprises, the longest she'd held a job since her mother's diagnosis. The flexible night hours had been perfect for her caregiving schedule. Now it was over. I assume I'm fired, she said, reaching for her building's door, dignity the only thing she had left. That depends. Marcus glanced inside the bag, confirming his precious merger papers were intact. Did you read these? Maria hesitated. The truth was, she had glanced at them. Enough to see they contained information about closing the very division she cleaned each night. Enough to know over 200 people would lose their jobs next month. I saw the title page, she admitted. Nothing more. Marcus studied her face. 15 years of business had taught him to read people. She was hiding something, but was it corporate espionage or simple embarrassment? I need to be certain. These contain highly sensitive information. His voice hardened again. I'll need to know exactly what you saw and who you might have told. Maria's shoulders slumped. My mother is waiting for her medication. Can we please do this inside? For the first time, Marcus noticed how exhausted she looked. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her uniform hung loosely on her frame, suggesting recent weight loss. Against his better judgment, he nodded. 5 minutes. The apartment building's hallway smelled of cabbage and cleaning solution. Maria led him to apartment 3B, fishing a key from her pocket. Marcus noted how her hands still trembled. Either she was terrified of him, or there was more to her story. Mama, I'm home, Maria called softly as she pushed open the door. I brought someone from work. The apartment was small but immaculately clean. What caught Marcus off guard was how sparse it was. A worn sofa, a small TV that must have been 15 years old, a dining table with mismatched chairs. This was poverty, the kind he hadn't seen up close since childhood. Maria, did you get your check today? The weak voice came from a bedroom just off the main living area. Something about that voice made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. Yes, Mama. I'll get your medicine soon. Just need to talk to someone first. Marcus followed Maria toward the bedroom doorway, still clutching the paper bag. His anger had ebbed, replaced by an odd feeling of déjà vu. The voice. Something about that voice. "Who is it, mija?" "Not another bill collector." Marcus stepped into view of the bedroom, prepared to make his presence known, to get this uncomfortable situation over with quickly. The world stopped spinning. The woman propped up on pillows was thin. Too thin, her once black hair now streaked with silver. An oxygen tank sat beside the bed, tubes running to her nose. But Marcus would have known those eyes anywhere. They were the same eyes that had checked under his bed for monsters. The same eyes that had welled with tears when he'd won his first spelling bee. The same eyes that had comforted him when his parents' plane went down over the Atlantic. Rosa. The name escaped his lips before he could stop it. The woman squinted, confusion crossing her features before slow recognition dawned. Little Marcus. Her hand rose to cover her mouth. "Is it really you?" Maria looked between them, bewildered. "Mama, you know him?" Marcus Harrington, billionaire CEO, notorious corporate shark, the man Forbes had once dubbed the Heartless Titan, felt his knees go weak. The paper bag slipped from his fingers, merger documents scattering across the floor as 20 years of composure crumbled in an instant. "She raised me," he whispered, his voice suddenly that of a lost boy rather than a powerful man. "After my parents died, she was my nanny, until she disappeared when I was 12. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my little boy, you've grown so tall." The merger documents lay forgotten on the floor as Marcus took an unsteady step forward. His legs nearly gave out beneath him, and he grabbed the doorframe for support. "You vanished," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "One day you were there, and the next. Nothing. No goodbye. No explanation. My uncle said you'd quit, but I never believed him." Rosa's thin hand reached toward him, trembling in the air between them. "I never wanted to leave you, Niño. Never." Maria stood frozen, her eyes darting between her mother and the man she'd known only as her intimidating boss. "Mama, what's happening? How do you know Mr. Harrington?" Rosa's eyes never left Marcus's face. "I was his nanny after his parents died. For 5 years, I raised him as my own." She paused, coughing weakly. "Until his uncle forced me to leave." Marcus crossed the small room in 2 strides, kneeling beside the bed. Up close, he could see how illness had ravaged her once vibrant face. Yet beneath the oxygen tubes and pallid skin, she was unmistakably his Rosa. "Uncle Richard said you took money from the estate, that you left because you were caught stealing." The words tasted bitter on his tongue, accusations he'd never fully believed even as a child. Rosa shook her head, her eyes flashing with a hint of their old fire. "Is that what he told you? That man?" She broke off, another coughing fit racking her frail body. Maria rushed to her side, adjusting the oxygen flow. "Mama, your medication. You need to stay calm." Marcus found himself reaching for Rosa's hand, the same hand that had once brushed away his tears and straightened his school ties. Her skin felt paper-thin beneath his fingers. "What really happened, Rosa?" he asked quietly. Rosa squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "Your uncle discovered I was sending money to my daughter in Mexico, to Maria and my husband. He accused me of stealing, threatened to call immigration, said I would never see my family again if I didn't leave quietly." The pieces clicked into place in Marcus's mind. The sudden disappearance, his uncle's evasive answers, the way the other household staff would fall silent whenever he asked about Rosa. "He separated us," Marcus whispered. "Why didn't you tell me? Write to me." "I tried, mi corazón. I wrote so many letters. Later, when I finally got my papers and could return, your uncle had sold the house. No one knew where you had gone." Her eyes searched his face. "I looked for you for years. Then I saw you in a magazine once. So successful, so important. I thought, you wouldn't want someone like me disrupting your new life." Maria sank into a chair beside the bed, her world tilting on its axis. All these years, cleaning offices, taking night shifts, you never once mentioned you raised Marcus Harrington. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. How could I explain losing a child I loved as my own? The pain was too great. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the soft hiss of the oxygen tank. 3 people connected by an invisible thread, suddenly pulled tight after decades of separation. Marcus felt the weight of realization settling on his shoulders. How many coincidences and choices had brought them to this moment? His company, her job, the mistaken documents. "If you hadn't taken that bag," he began. "If you hadn't followed me," Maria continued. Rosa smiled weakly. God works in mysterious ways. The mention of God brought another memory surging back, Rosa's voice singing Spanish hymns as she prepared Sunday breakfast. The feeling of safety those mornings had brought him after his parents' death. "You have pulmonary fibrosis," Marcus said, noting the medications on the bedside table. "How long have you been sick?" 3 years, Maria answered for her mother. "It's why I needed the night job. Daytime is for her appointments and care. The insurance barely covers the basics." Marcus thought of his own premium health insurance, the private doctors who would come to his penthouse for a hangnail if he asked. The injustice of it burned in his chest. "This ends today," he said firmly, rising to his feet. Maria stiffened, misunderstanding his tone. "Please, Mr. Harrington, don't blame my mother for what I did. If someone needs to be fired—" "No one is getting fired, Maria." Marcus cut her off, his business voice returning. "Except perhaps my uncle from the board of directors. But that's a discussion for another day." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. "What are you doing?" Maria asked warily. "Calling Dr. Patel. She's the best pulmonologist on the East Coast." He glanced at his watch. "She owes me a favor." Rosa tried to sit up straighter. "Marcus, we cannot accept charity. We have our pride." The word charity struck him like a physical blow. Is that what she thought this was? "This isn't charity, Rosa." His voice softened as he looked at the woman who had shown him more love in 5 years than his blood relatives had in a lifetime. "This is family." The word hung in the air between them, fragile and powerful. "I lost you once," Marcus continued, emotion making his voice rough. "I won't lose you again." Before anyone could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Jessica Parker. "Where are you?" "Bored, waiting for merger presentations." Nichols threatening to walk. The real world intruded on their reunion. The documents on the floor, still confidential, still containing plans that would devastate hundreds of families, suddenly seemed like pages from another life. Marcus looked from his phone to Rosa, then to Maria. "I need to make some calls," he said, "and not just a doctor. Patel." He stepped out into the tiny living room, merger papers clutched in his hand. For 15 minutes, Maria and Rosa could hear his voice, authoritative, occasionally sharp, but with a new undercurrent of something neither had heard from him before. When he returned, there was a new light in his eyes. "The merger's off," he announced, "at least in its current form." Maria gasped. "But those papers, billions of dollars?" Marcus shrugged, a gesture so casual it seemed out of place on his usually rigid frame. "Some things are more important than money." Rosa studied his face, seeing both the boy she'd loved and the man he'd become. "What made you change your mind?" Marcus's gaze moved between them. "Let's just say I remembered something someone very wise once taught me. That a man's true wealth isn't measured by his bank account, but by the lives he touches." Rosa's smile was radiant despite her illness. "You remembered." "I never forgot," Marcus replied softly. "I just lost my way for a while." He turned to Maria. "I have a proposal for you. And it's not charity, it's business." Maria raised an eyebrow, skeptical but listening. "I want to create a new division. Employee welfare and community support. We've grown too disconnected from our people." He paused. "I need someone who understands struggling families, someone with integrity, to lead it. Before Maria could respond, he added, "The position comes with comprehensive family health insurance." Starting immediately. If you've been enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It costs you nothing but means everything to us as storytellers. Now, let's continue with this unexpected reunion. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. "Why would you trust me with something like that? You hardly know me." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd given in longer than he could remember. "I know your mother, and clearly the apple didn't fall far from the tree." That night changed everything. Within hours, Dr. Patel arrived at the small apartment, medical bag in hand. She asked no questions about why Marcus Harrington was sitting in a janitor's living room, drinking coffee from a chipped mug. She simply got to work, examining Rosa with gentle efficiency. The current treatment plan isn't aggressive enough, she concluded, writing prescriptions that Marcus immediately sent to his personal assistant to be filled. She needs more specialized care than she's receiving. Maria watched this flurry of activity with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Just hours ago, she'd been certain she was about to lose her job. Now, a top specialist was in their living room, and Marcus Harrington was arranging for a hospital bed to be delivered the next day. "Is this really happening?" she whispered to herself as Dr. Patel packed up to leave. Marcus overheard her. "It is," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "And it's just the beginning." The next morning, Marcus arrived at Harrington Enterprises 2 hours late for the first time in his career. The board members waiting in the conference room fell silent as he strode in, not in his usual immaculate suit, but in the same clothes from yesterday, now rumpled from a night spent in an armchair beside Rosa's bed. "Gentlemen, ladies," he greeted them, his voice steady. "The Nichols merger is being restructured. We will not be closing the manufacturing division." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Charles Westfield, his longest-serving board member, stood up in protest. "Marcus, we've spent months on this deal. The numbers don't work if we keep those factories open. They're outdated, inefficient." "Then we'll update them," Marcus interrupted. "Modernize, retrain our workforce." "That will cost millions," another board member objected. Marcus surveyed the table of shocked faces. "Yes, it will. And it will be worth every penny." Richard Harrington, Marcus's uncle and minority shareholder, scoffed loudly. "This isn't like you, Marcus. Since when do you care about factory workers over profit margins?" Marcus met his uncle's gaze steadily. The man who had driven Rosa away, who had separated him from the only parent figure he had left after the plane crash. For years, Marcus had respected him as a businessman, despite their personal differences. Now, he saw him clearly for the first time. "Since I remembered what actually matters," Marcus replied evenly. "And speaking of what matters, Uncle Richard, we need to discuss your position on this board." Richard's face reddened. "Is this some kind of joke? I built this company with your father." "And then you ran it with intimidation and cruelty after he died," Marcus countered, "including driving away my nanny under false accusations." A hush fell over the room. Office rumors about Marcus's childhood had circulated for years, but no one had ever heard him mention it directly. "That woman was stealing from the estate," Richard sputtered. "That woman was sending money to her family," Marcus corrected him, "her legal earnings, and she happened to be the only person who showed me any kindness after my parents died." He turned to address the entire board. "I found her yesterday. By complete coincidence. She's the mother of one of our janitors. She's dying, Uncle Richard. Dying in poverty while I sit in a penthouse with more rooms than I can use." The silence in the room was deafening. Even Richard seemed momentarily stunned. "I understand business," Marcus continued. "I understand profit. But I've forgotten something my father never did, that companies are made of people, not just shareholders, but every person who walks through our doors, from the executives to the night-cleaning staff." He pressed a button, and the large screen at the end of the room lit up with a presentation that hadn't existed 24 hours ago. This is my proposal for restructuring both the company and the merger. It includes a new division focused on employee welfare and community engagement. It maintains our profit margins while preserving jobs. And yes, it reduces our initial ROI by approximately 2%. He paused, looking each board member in the eye. But it increases our sustainability, our public image, and most importantly, our integrity. My father would have approved, and as majority shareholder, so do I. 3 weeks later, Maria stood nervously outside the door of her new office. The nameplate read, Maria Alvarez, Director of Employee Welfare and Community Initiatives. She still couldn't believe it was real. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Rosa had been transferred to the city's best hospital, where a team of specialists had started her on a new treatment protocol. While it couldn't cure her pulmonary fibrosis, they were optimistic about extending her quality of life significantly. Marcus had visited every day, sometimes just for a few minutes between meetings, other times staying for hours, reminiscing with Rosa about the past and making plans for the future. And through it all, he had mentored Maria, preparing her for the new role he'd created. She'd protested at first, insisting she wasn't qualified. She had never even finished college. But Marcus had been adamant. You worked 3 jobs to support your mother while navigating a complex healthcare system, he'd said. You understand what our employees need better than any MBA graduate I could hire. Now, as she took a deep breath and opened her office door for the first time, she found Marcus waiting inside. First day nerves? He asked with a smile that still looked new on his face. His employees were still adjusting to this changed version of their CEO, one who smiled occasionally and actually knew people's names. Terrified, Maria admitted, smoothing her new blazer. What if I fail? You won't, he said simply, handing her a folder. These are the employee files for the manufacturing division. 218 people who still have jobs because of what happened 3 weeks ago. I thought you should see the faces behind the numbers. Maria opened the folder, looking at the photos and names. Families that would have been devastated by layoffs were now secure. I still don't understand, she said, looking up at him. How did one night change you so completely? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her question. It didn't, he finally replied. Finding Rosa again, finding you, it didn't change me. It reminded me of who I already was, who I was meant to be before grief and ambition hardened me. He moved to the window, looking out at the city spread below them. My father built this company to create something that would last, that would support families for generations. When he died, I was so focused on making it bigger, more profitable, that I forgot his real legacy. He turned back to her. Rosa used to tell me that true success means lifting others as you rise. Maria smiled, recognizing her mother's wisdom. She still says that. I've spent 20 years rising, Marcus said softly. It's time I started lifting. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus's assistant, Jessica, poked her head in. Sorry to disturb you, but Rosa's doctor's on line 1. She says it's important, but not urgent. Maria reached for the phone, but Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. Take it on speakerphone, he suggested. We're family now, remember? Family. The word still felt strange. This new connection forged through coincidence and a mistaken paper bag. But as they gathered around the phone to hear the doctor's latest update, Maria realized it was true. Through a series of extraordinary events, a desperate need for food, a carelessly placed document, a CEO's anger, and a nanny's love that had never faded, they had found each other. And in finding each other, they had found themselves. 6 months later, Rosa sat in a wheelchair on the patio of Marcus's beach house, a thick blanket covering her legs despite the summer warmth. The ocean breeze lifted her silver hair as she watched Maria and Marcus walking along the shoreline, deep in conversation. They're plotting something, she murmured to Jessica, who had become a regular visitor and friend during Rosa's treatment. Jessica smiled, adjusting Rosa's oxygen tube. They're always plotting something, usually something good. It was true. In the months since their reunion, Marcus and Maria had become an unstoppable force for change, both at Harrington Enterprises and beyond. The Employee Welfare Division had expanded rapidly, implementing programs that were already being copied by other corporations: on-site child care, education assistance, flexible schedules for caregivers. The business press had been baffled at first. "Heartless Titan Goes Soft," read one headline. But when quarterly profits remained strong despite the increased employee benefits, the narrative shifted. "Harrington's human touch, the new corporate model," declared the Wall Street Journal. And through it all, Rosa had watched with pride as the frightened boy she'd once comforted grew into the man she'd always known he could be. "They're coming back," Jessica noted, gathering her things. "I should head out. My son's baseball game starts in an hour." "Go," Rosa insisted. "Marcus would fire me if I made you miss it." They both laughed at the absurdity of the statement, as if Marcus would ever fire the woman who had become like a mother to him again. As if Rosa, despite her illness, wasn't now an honored consultant for the company's Hispanic Employee Outreach Program. As Jessica left, Marcus and Maria climbed the steps to the patio. Their faces were serious, but there was an undercurrent of excitement in their movements. "You two look like children with a secret," Rosa observed, her voice stronger than it had been in years, thanks to the experimental treatment Dr. Patel had found for her. Marcus pulled a chair close to her. "We have something to tell you." Maria took her mother's hand. "Something big." Rosa looked between them. "If you're going to tell me you're dating, I already knew. A mother always knows." Marcus and Maria exchanged startled glances, then burst out laughing. "No, Mama," Maria said, still chuckling. "We're not dating. We're family in a different way." Marcus nodded. "Though I admit, in another life, I might have been smart enough to fall in love with an Alvarez woman." Rosa patted his cheek affectionately. "So, what is this big news then?" Marcus took a deep breath. "We're establishing the Rosa Alvarez Foundation." Maria continued, her voice thick with emotion. "It will provide support for immigrant caregivers and their families, health care, legal assistance, education. And it will be funded with $50 million to start," Marcus added, "with annual contributions from Harrington Enterprises." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. $50 million? Marcus, that's too much." "Actually," he replied with a gentle smile, "it's not nearly enough. But it's a start." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. Rosa recognized it immediately. The Spanish prayer book she had read from each night when tucking young Marcus into bed. "You kept it," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "It was all I had left of you," he replied softly. "I couldn't read the words, but I remembered how they sounded when you said them." He opened the book to a page marked with a faded photograph. Rosa and 12-year-old Marcus at his school science fair, both grinning proudly at his first-place trophy. "This was taken the week before you left," he said. "I've carried it with me every day since." Maria squeezed her mother's hand. "The foundation logo is based on this photo. Both of you, together." Rosa looked out at the ocean, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never dreamed," she began, but emotion overwhelmed her. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair. "When I followed Maria home that night, I thought I was just retrieving stolen documents. I had no idea I was finding my way back to myself." Maria added softly, "And I thought I was about to lose my job. Instead, I found a brother." The three of them sat together as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting golden light across the water. Their unlikely family, forged through loss, coincidence, and rediscovery. "There's one more thing," Marcus said after a comfortable silence. "Richard is out." Rosa's eyes widened. "Your uncle?" "From the company." Marcus nodded, his expression serious but not vengeful. "The board voted unanimously after we discovered he'd been manipulating financial reports for years. It wasn't just you he lied about, Rosa." "I'm sorry," she said, genuinely meaning it. Despite what Richard had done to her, she took no joy in anyone's downfall. "Don't be," Marcus replied. "It was necessary, and maybe now he'll have time to reflect on what truly matters in life." As twilight deepened around them, a nurse appeared to take Rosa inside for her evening medications. Marcus helped transfer her from the wheelchair, his movements gentle and practiced after months of sharing in her care. "You don't have to do this every day," Rosa protested, though weakly. It had become a familiar exchange between them. "Yes, I do," he replied simply, as he always did. Later that night, after Rosa had fallen asleep, Marcus found Maria standing on the deck, looking out at the moonlit ocean. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "I was just thinking about that brown paper bag," she replied. "How something so small changed everything." Marcus chuckled. "Poor Jessica. She still apologizes at least once a week for using it to transport the merger documents." "She shouldn't," Maria said firmly. "It was the best mistake anyone ever made." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the waves. "The doctor says her new treatment is working better than expected," Marcus said quietly. "We might have years, not months." Maria nodded, tears of gratitude in her eyes. Time enough for her to see the foundation launch, to know her legacy will help others like us. "Like the three of us," Marcus corrected gently. "I needed her help as much as you did. I just didn't know it until that night." The breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility as they contemplated the future they were building together. A future born from a CEO following a janitor home to fire her, only to find a piece of his heart he'd thought was lost forever. Inside the beach house, Rosa Alvarez slept peacefully, her dreams no longer haunted by regret or separation. In her bedside table lay a small, worn prayer book, now joined by something new, a foundation charter bearing her name and a promise that her love would continue to change lives long after she was gone. And in a desk drawer in Marcus Harrington's study sat a brown paper bag, preserved not for the billion-dollar deal it had once contained, but as a reminder that sometimes the things we think we've lost are simply waiting to be found again. Please do comment your feedback and subscribe to our channel for more unexpected stories. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.